authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us. From personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
Exhibits. The next witness did Ms. Ventura's makeup. But what's the purpose of the pictures? It's a 402 issue first, relevance. Combs' attorney responds, Ms. Ventura testified about her career being impacted. And the prosecutor says, I'll stipulate. David, so it seems to me the defense is suggesting to the idea that Sean Combs controlled all aspects of her life, controlled her career, her appearance, very important power dynamics for sex trafficking. But it does become a question if this is relevant. What are you taking away from that?
Look, I think it's a minor point. I mean, they're arguing over the introduction of this photo, whether it comes in or doesn't come in. Is it, at the end of the day, is it really going to make a big difference? So I get it. But again, I think I don't see the relevance to it unless I hear more argument.
Got a question for you, Safa. This is from MM7. Is it likely the prosecution is starting with older victims and older evidence, Cassie, Kid Cudi, but as the trial continues, they will get into more recent crimes and victims tied into the RICO case? Good question.
It's very possible. I think one of the main reasons why Miss Ventura went first initially was because she was victim number one. Not only that, she's very heavily pregnant. She could go into labor at some point in time in the very near future. And they wanted to ensure that she would still be able to testify in the event that she ultimately went into labor and would be out on some sort of maternity leave for the remainder of the trial. So I think that's initially why they put her on. I think we've still got to hear from victim 2 and victim 3. I expect that they are going to be alleged newer victims and that they will provide more up-to-date or more recent testimony about more recent acts and activities alleged against Mr. Combs.
Safa, you mentioned alleged victim number 3, so let me throw this question to you. This is from Vero 463. Wasn't victim 3 subpoenaed? Wouldn't they be prosecuted for not appearing in court? Because there's an issue about where is this person? Are they having trouble contacting this person? It's a good question.
They can absolutely be prosecuted. So it's going to be interesting to see what route the government takes with respect to this victim. That is a material witness. That person has been subpoenaed. I think I've heard not only have they not been able to get a hold of victim 3, but they also haven't been able to get a hold of the attorney. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's at least what I've heard. So very interesting to see how the government's going to handle this. Now, this person seems to not be cooperative at this point. Does the government really want to put a witness on who has been missing in action and uncooperative will also be a question that they're going to really have to strategically decide.
I got a question for you, Matt. This is from NLin93. If there were DNA from the car, so I think they're talking about Kid Cudi's Porsche that was allegedly set on fire by Sean Combs and his associates. If there were DNA from the car, wouldn't the feds know? Because he was asked about, do you know if DNA was extracted from the car? And he didn't know. This was the question that he was posed by Brian Steele. The DNA taken, are you aware it came back being a female? And there was an objection. Okay. And then Steele says, do you know there were DNA results? And Scott Muscuddy said no. So I guess go back to the question, if there were DNA from the car, wouldn't the feds know?
You would certainly think so. But, you know, as a general proposition for everyone to understand, heat is one of the things that destroys DNA. Okay, heat, time, water. DNA is biological material, of course, and that you wouldn't expect to find too much at an arson scene when it comes to DNA in general.
I mentioned I have another question from you from Mbasa Naibi. He mentioned this before. So you talked about how many times he can appeal if he's convicted. Follow-up question, can one appeal if they take a deal?
Generally, no. Once you take a deal, it essentially is, the appellate process is essentially ended at that. You've admitted what you've done. But I don't see any prospect here of any sort of settlement in this. This is going to go to a jury verdict.
There was talk about whether or not he rejected a deal before trial, but now we're in the crux of the trial. We're after Cassandra Ventura's testimony. So the prosecution could be like, you forced us to put her on the stand and recount these traumatic memories, alleged traumatic memories. They might not offer a deal, or if it is a deal, it's not going to be as attractive as it was before, right?
I just, look, once the trial starts, once you get a jury panel, you start calling witnesses, it is very rare that this is not a civil case. And by the way, Dave Ring knows more about the civil side of sexual abuse than anybody else in the country. Civil cases often will settle in the middle because it's about money. Criminal cases are very different. This missile has been launched, so to speak, as one of my old bosses used to put it, and this is gonna get hashed out by the jury.
Speaking of David Ring, let me go to David Ring. We got a question from Claudio Zadorotos. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Could Sean Combs' defense be shielding officials present at the freak-off parties by not requesting the videos, choosing to play for a lighter sentence instead?
Well, I think if I understand the question right, are they saying is Sean Combs' defense trying to, hide evidence in this trial? Is that the question?
Yeah, it's tough to know. Shielding officials present at the freak-off party. So I'm guessing they're assuming there are other people who are being not mentioned at these, freak-offs, and was deliberately not, moving forward with more evidence to show who was there. But how that ties into maybe a lighter sentence, I'm not sure 100% follow, but yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think that's the prosecution's job, right? The prosecution is they're going to go out there and they're going to find the witnesses who are there and who are willing to testify about this. So Sean Combs doesn't have any obligation to produce witnesses that hurt his defense. That's the prosecution's job. I think the prosecution so far has done a fine job of finding some of these key witnesses and former employees who are testifying and really laying out a RICO case against Combs and the enterprise.
So we have another update from court. It says, so again, it's back and forth about what image or images will be shown to the jury. The judge says, this one is of a public event, so what's the problem? Prosecutor Comey says, it's a low-cut dress. Judge says, I'm allowing it in, but not 652 nor 745. Bring in the witness and the jury. And the witness is a Mila Morales, who's a celebrity makeup artist. What's 652 or 745?
As far as the evidence code?
Yeah, if you know off the top of your head.
Essentially what the judge is doing is the judge is weighing prejudicial effect versus probative value on all these items of evidence. And the judge has to do that for virtually any item of evidence. So he is allowing in photos from the public event, but this judge has done a very good job, in my opinion, of kind of cutting away the fat, so to speak, on some of the more shocking or other things. For example, the jury saw stills of some of the freak-offs, but not the full video. It's going to be interesting to see what the defense does with that overall. But that's a judge's job. You're watching a judge essentially be a judge.
So before you guys got on, I was doing, I was giving my own analysis of the case, and one of the questions that I was asked was, if he's acquitted, do you think they're going to bring more charges against him? I said, probably highly unlikely. Whatever evidence they had against him, they were going to go forward with right now. Which does beg the question, because I brought it up before. I'll go to you, Safa. This is a question from Anthony O'Farrell. Why aren't there any minor victims in the criminal case? Because you and I know that he has been alleged to have abused minors in civil lawsuits. Criminal arena, very different than civil. But again, why, Safa, aren't there any minor victims in the criminal case?
I don't think that there's any evidence to support that there are any minor victims in this case. And if there certainly was evidence to support that, the government would have charged him with that. The burden of proof and the standard in our criminal world or during criminal practice is much different than civil. Civil is a much lower burden. With respect to criminal charges, there has to be an establishment of probable cause to make the arrest, and then the case will litigate on. And at the jury stage, once the jury gets the case, the government has to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for each element of each offense. I don't think that there is any evidence that would indicate that there were children victims or child victims, and because of that, the government wouldn't charge that.
Got an update from court. This is okay. So this is this makeup artist being questioned. The prosecutor says, "Do you recognize anyone you've worked for?" And Ms. Morales says, "Sean Combs in the gray sweater and white collar." "When did you work for Mr. Combs?" 2000 to 2005. "Then who?" "Rihanna." "Who else?" "Jennifer Lopez." "Cassie." David, what are you expecting from this witness?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure. We're going to find out. I mean, did she witness more violent acts? Was she involved in some of these RICO predicate acts that she was drawn into? Did she see the bruises on Cassie's face? Did Cassie confide in her that she was being, beaten by Sean Combs? We don't know. We're going to find out really quickly.
And maybe covering up the bruises with makeup. That could potentially be what's going on. Got a question for you, Matt. Chris Buono. Can Combs at any time during the trial be charged with even more, or did all the charges need to be revealed in the indictment before the trial started? So kind of similar question.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. The answer is no. Okay, the defense is entitled to notice. So if new evidence comes to light, they would have to, in theory, charge that in a separate case. But like you said, Jesse, that's very, very rare, if not impossible, when it comes to criminal prosecutions, because he has a right to a defense, he has a right to prepare, he has a right to investigate and all that sort of thing. So the answer is no.
Safa, a question from Lily Gazarian. If the case becomes a hung jury and needs to be retried, will he be released until the new trial begins?
I highly doubt that. They've made so many applications for his release, and the circumstances really won't change. They have to prove a risk of flight and a threat to the community, and they seem to have proven that here, and the judge seems to have gone along with the prosecution in the belief that there at least he may not be a risk of flight. However, there may be an issue with regard to being a threat to the community or witness tampering and things of that nature. So I do expect that if for some reason this lands in a mistrial, that he will remain in custody pending the new trial.
Okay, I got a new poll update and I got a court update. The poll update is, we put it out, does it matter if Diddy blew up Kid Cudi's car? 81% say yes, 19% say no. I side with the yes. I mentioned it before. Goes to arson, one of the predicate crimes. For racketeering, also goes to this overall concept of a criminal enterprise and violence and people helping Combs commit crimes or conceal crimes. That's the allegation put forward by the prosecution. Update from court. Prosecutor asks this makeup artist, when did you work with Cassie? Morales responds, 2007 until COVID. So 13 years. She was like a little sister to me. How much older than her are you? A few years. Did you see her with injuries on her face? 2010 Grammy weekend Prince party. There you go, David.
Corroborative evidence. The prosecution's doing a really good job of bringing in other witnesses who corroborate Cassie's testimony. And why is that important? That builds up Cassie's credibility in front of this jury, that she's just not up there saying things that aren't true. Now you have these independent witnesses coming in, backing up exactly what she testified to. Very important.
But David, I will say, I think I could feel very confident to say at this point the prosecution believes that Sean Combs physically abused Cassandra Ventura Fine. The documents, the photographs, the 2016 video, her testimony, Dawn Richard's testimony, Kerry Morgan's testimony, makeup artist, her mother. I think there's a lot to suggest. The question becomes, is it sex trafficking? What do you think at this point in the case?
Absolutely, I think it is. Look, he is bringing in, basically male sex workers and paying them in cash to participate in these freak-offs. And you can have a debate all day on whether Cassie Ventura, it was consensual or not. I'll always take the position that it was not consensual. She is a victim. She's being beaten and she's being manipulated. And to me, that is absolutely sex trafficking.
Yeah, the counter argument is, of course, the defense would say it's just domestic violence. They're not attaching the physical violence to the freak-offs per se. But I will say this much. I think the two most concrete examples, why am I talking to myself? For two most concrete examples, I think, of sex trafficking, the 2016 tape, right? So he allegedly kicks her, beats her, drags her right after a freak-off or an alleged freak-off, and the allegation that on a plane he shows her tapes of the freak-offs as a way to intimidate her, embarrass her, and what does he allegedly demand right after they land? A freak-off. She has a freak-off. That feels to me two concrete examples of sex trafficking.
Well, that's what the prosecution's theory is, certainly. But remember, there's essentially three incarnations of that. One is it's one of the predicate acts of the RICO allegations, okay? The other is the sex trafficking itself, but as the defense has pointed out, they must establish essentially fraud, coercion, or some form of threat of fear of force. So force, fraud, or coercion. The theory is coercion. She's being coerced to do that for financial reasons and everything else. The third incarnation, if you will, of that is the transportation of prostitutes over state lines. Sure. Those are Mann Act violations. Those carry up to a 10-year penalty each. I think the prosecution's already satisfied that.
I do too.
What the defense is going to argue is that this is exactly what you said. This is a domestic violence case. And it's the world's most persuasive domestic violence case with the video and everything else. But that is a problem in their relationship, and it doesn't go to advancing this criminal enterprise that they've alleged.
That's why they're focusing so much. He's jealous, he's anger, she was jealous, problems in the relationship.
I'm going to stop that there. They were wrapping that up. And I really want to point out maybe Diddy's lawyer was right about this just being a witch hunt against a black man that, billionaire playing with billionaire money on billionaire type of time. He pissed off Briaggio or whoever the hell that liquor is. They were able to get into some high places, set it off on Diddy. And this is what they got going on. We're now going to sip some tea from the Burden of Proof. Thanks to ABC News Live.
Hi, I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. Week 2 of testimony in the trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs wrapping up today with witnesses, including the general manager of a luxury Beverly Hills hotel on the stand. The jury also hearing from rapper Kid Cudi today. He testified about a break-in at his house, at one point comparing Combs to a Marvel supervillain. The rapper, whose real name is Scott Muscati, also testifying about his car being set on fire, allegedly after Combs found out he was dating Cassie Ventura. Now, prosecutors allege Combs firebombed Muscati's car, an allegation they could try to weave into the racketeering conspiracy count involving arson. Now, Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Also today, Diddy's former assistant, who was granted immunity, testifying about what he claims he saw happen on a private plane and an apple throwing incident that he called the last straw working for Diddy. Coming up, Kid Cudi's message for fans after his big day in court. Plus, it's one of the most searched topics tonight, what people want to know about Kid Cudi's dog. I want to get right to Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katursky, who has been in the courtroom every day of this trial. Aaron, let's get right into Kid Cudi appearing in court. Paint the picture for us. How did he walk in?
Unlike any other witness that we have seen so far, he's in a leather jacket, white t-shirt, jeans, and smoking a cigarette as he's entering court. And then he takes his position comfortably in the witness box, surveys the room. The jury is interested in this figure because he's a Grammy-winning rapper and introduced himself as Scott Muscati. And when asked, are you better known as any other name? And he said, Kid Cudi. And right from the start, you knew this was a unique witness. And he talked about two instances in particular where he said that Sean Combs broke into his house, and he told the jury about his suspicions that later Sean Combs arranged the firebombing of his car.
Okay, Aaron, give us his vibe. What was he like on the stand? How did the jury react to all of this?
He was pretty casual. If he didn't understand something, he'd look at the lawyer and just go, huh? Or what? And at one point he let out a big yawn when he's talking about things that, have been talked about in the entertainment world for more than a decade. This car fire that Kid Cudi endured in 2012. But it's significant now, Eva, as federal prosecutors try to convince the jury that Sean Combs used arson as part of the criminal enterprise that he was running.
There was a whole scuttlebutt about if he could talk about what happened to his dog. What was that all about?
Oh, so he accuses Sean Combs of breaking into his house after he finds out that he's dating Cassie Ventura. And he says when he got to the house, he found some Christmas gifts open, unwrapped, that he had bought for his family, and his dog locked up in the bathroom. And he said it made the dog kind of permanently jittery and very much on edge. I think federal prosecutors had wanted to know a little bit about the dog and how the dog responded to the house being broken into. And the judge at one point, because the defense objected, was confused, saying, like, you're going to talk about the trauma inflicted on the dog. And the judge said, well, I know this is a very important topic. He laughed a little bit. And unfortunately, the prosecutor said the dog is no longer with us. But Kid Cudi's clearly a dog lover. He said that he found out from his dog's babysitter, the words he used, that his car was on fire. One early morning phone call that he received from this woman to say that his porch had been torched.
Cassie Ventura's former makeup artist was also on the stand today. What did she say?
Mila Morales said she first met Cassie Ventura, Eva, when she was about 16 years old. She had made her up for various events over the years, but she recalled Grammy Award weekend in 2010. She said they had been out. Prince was having a party. They were out for dinner. They finally get back to the Beverly Hills Hotel. Mila Morales falls asleep, but she says Cassie Ventura comes in a moment later and almost immediately followed by Sean Combs. And Sean Combs demands, where the F is she? Cassie Ventura had gone into the bedroom. Sean Combs followed her in there. Mila Morales says she heard screaming and a commotion. Sean Combs storms out of the hotel suite. And when Mila Morales next sees Cassie Ventura, she has a black eye, knots on her head. She took her home and had a doctor friend come and examine her to see if she had a concussion. The doctor apparently recommended that Cassie Ventura go to the ER, but Morales said she didn't want to go.
We also heard from the general manager of an upscale Beverly Hills hotel on the stand today. He talked about hotel logs. Why?
This was from L'Hermitage in Beverly Hills, and Sean Combs had stayed there a bunch over the years, according to the reservation log. And with each guest that was a repeat visitor, there was what was called a profile log established. And under the heading for Sean Combs, it said that housekeepers.
Ooh, they got pictures of the hotels, y'all. Look at that. This is from the L'Hermitage Beverly Hills Hotel. Log shown the jury about Sean Combs' former stays. Girl, what the was they doing? And well, we know they was freaking, but like they was fighting too. Jesus, they tore that poor hotel up.
Had noticed that there was always candle wax all over the place and that he used a lot of oil. And the jury had already heard candle wax, baby oil, those were things for the freak-offs.
Aaron Katursky for us there at the courthouse. Thank you so much, Aaron. ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer was also in court.
I mean, it just looked like, those scenes look like, the broken nights and dreams with Diddy days and nights. Everything broken, everything destroyed, everything in a disarray. And it looked like the broken dreams of Diddy.
Court today. You are here to break this all down for us. Okay, so it was a big day in court. What stood out to you?
So we all showed up for Kid Cudi. We knew he was going to testify, but I did not expect this quote from Kid Cudi. It came in the context of there was some back and forth between him and Sean Combs. He wasn't responding to him in terms of whether or not he was dating Cassie. His car gets Molotov cocktailed. He shows up at the Soho house to try to kind of squash the beef, so to speak, with Combs. And he says this is what Combs is doing. He's standing there staring at the window with his hands behind his back like a Marvel supervillain. It got a couple laughs in the court, but also painted this very menacing and very awkward kind of encounter between Sean Combs and Kid Cudi in relation to who's dating Cassie.
We also have to talk about this alleged car bombing situation. What did Kid Cudi say happened here?
So a number of things, right? A little bit of context. Prior to this alleged arson, there is a alleged
Kid Cudi has introduced evidence into the testimony that appears to be a picture of the top of his Porsche cut open, toe up,
that Kid
What do
Cudi.
you guys make of it? Do you guys think that, I mean, after 10 years, this can be something that they convict Diddy of, tie it into the racketeering, trafficking, arson, all of that, um, from 10 years ago? And do they have distinct proof that Diddy really did it? Any evidence besides Kid Cudi and others speculating that it happened? Because Diddy denies it. Is there anything other than them saying he did it as a way of proving that he did it?
He says Sean Combs are participating in. Someone calls him by the name of Miss Clark saying, Combs is in your home. He calls Combs. He's like, where are you? I'm here. I'm going to come see you, whatever it may be. And a few days later, this happens. The cut of the top of his Porsche and a Molotov cocktail inside. We saw some charring on the inside of that vehicle. And we've heard this from Cassie's civil lawsuit and this case when she testified before, that this was meant to be a threat, according to her, of Sean Combs towards Kid Cudi.
And we should say that we heard Kid Cudi on the stand say when they talked about this, Combs denied having anything to do with this apparent situation.
Exactly.
Okay, so on the cross, the defense seemed to really push Kid Cudi on his relationship with Cassie. What was that all about?
So the sense that I got was that she's playing into this relationship with Kid Cudi and Sean Combs. That Sean Combs, as we heard, was on a break with Cassie, and then they started dating, Kid Cudi and her. And what the defense was getting at was, well, she lied to you. She played you, that they weren't really on again, off again, but in fact, they were still dating, and you didn't know this. And the entire time you were dating, Sean Combs never interrupted this relationship, never got involved. He didn't know he was in the scene at all. And I think what they're trying to get at is Cassie was free to leave. She was free to have her own relationship, and Sean Combs wasn't intersecting with that. And also this idea that she was manipulative in some way, shape, or form, saying the words.
So how do you feel, Sippers, that this narrative plays into the prosecution or Diddy's defense? The defense attorney asked Kid Cudi, the person who played you, the person who played Sean, was Miss Ventura true? And Kid Cudi responds, yeah. So does that, testify into how Cassie was also wrapped up in manipulation, narcissism, and just, playing on the emotions and however have you of the men that she was involved with, all up until she finally did leave Diddy and get with the trainer, Alex Fine. Even up until she was with Alex Fine, she was still going back willingly, voluntarily, from what she testified, being with Diddy on an intimate basis. And she also said in her testimony, she did not want the freak-offs to stop. She wanted them to stay how they were when they first started doing them. How do you guys feel that that's going to tie in for either side? I mean, I just don't see this persecuting Diddy. It's also showing how Cassie manipulated and played around with the men that she had in her life around the time she was with Diddy.
That, well, Cassie played not only you, but also Sean Combs, and Kid Cudi agreed.
We also have to talk about the former assistant who got the immunity from yesterday. He was back on the stand this morning. Did he say anything to you that made sense for the immunity deal here?
No. And it's one of the reasons why I woke up so early and showed up, because in my mind, I practice in the Southern District of New York. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you going to give this person immunity for? Meaning that they cannot be prosecuted based on what they say. That is so great that you're waiting for them. And it wasn't really much. 3 different interactions of assault, 2 between Cassie, 1 between Gina, and the fact that he bought some drugs, not as much as I thought it'd be.
Okay, so we've got this long weekend that's happening. Court's not in session tomorrow. It's not in session on Monday. How do you think that impacts both sides of this case?
It's all about what the
Well,
jury's
they're going to have a long Memorial weekend. No court for Diddy on Friday or Monday. He will be sitting in his cell awaiting to start his trial back up on Tuesday of next week, okay? The 27th.
is going to be left with thinking about in the last few wars they've heard. They heard about the wax and the baby oil, the strawberry and the chocolates, the abuse allegations from the Grammy of 2010. And of course, the last thing they heard is about an HSI investigator talking about extracting information from 3 of Cassie's laptops. Those are going to be the last things in their mind over the next 4 days because they're off tomorrow as well.
Yeah, back in court on Tuesday. Brian Buckmeyer, thank you so much. Well, now that testimony is wrapped ahead of the long weekend, we want to look back at a notable moment this week. Yesterday, a forensic psychologist took the stand as an expert witness for the prosecution, telling the jury in general about why some people stay in abusive relationships. Joining me now is Dr. Erin Nelson. She is not involved in the case against Sean Combs, but she knows what it's like to be a forensic psychologist on a high-profile criminal case. Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for being with us. Let's just start right there. Why do people stay?
You know, one of the things that is really important when you're talking to a jury or a case is that the lay public, the general public, obviously always has the why doesn't someone just walk away? And something that's really important to understand from a victimology standpoint is the sense of omnipotence that even in everyday relationships, somebody who has power and control over someone can exert. It's about the perception of the. And in this case, I'm certain that the forensic psychologist would have been looking at both the victimology and the offender's behavior to try to explain that to the jury.
So often in these types of circumstances, and even with this case, we've seen the comments online, people saying, well, she could have just left. What do you say to that?
I say that regardless of how high profile the matter is, such as this one, or to the millions of women that are suffering from intimate partner violence at home, that is the fundamental misunderstanding that is important to explain, especially in a criminal case to the jury, is that when somebody is in a domestic violence or an intimate partner or coercive control situation, that concept that lots of people think about, it's why don't they just walk out the door? Why don't they just take their things and go? That the psychology of it can be so overwhelming and so powerful for a victim in that stance that it feels impossible and perception rules the day.
Dr. Erin Nelson, thank you so much for being with us. And we should say, if you are experiencing domestic violence, help is available. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline 24/7. That number is 800-799-7233. Still ahead, breaking down the legal strategies at play on both sides. Rapper Kid Cudi in court today. Could evidence pose an issue for the defense? And the rivalry that's defined hip hop for a generation, how it's tied to this Diddy trial. Today, including a big name in hip hop who we've been talking about, Kid Cudi. Let's break down the key legal strategies that we saw. We have Brian Buckmeyer playing the defense, Bernarda Villalona playing prosecutor. Let's get right into this. The police report, Bernarda. A break-in to Kid Cudi's home in 2011. Does this actually matter?
It does matter in the sense of not really the break-in, but the arson part of it. But the break-in just leads you to believe, like, Jesus, how demented is Sean Combs? And I think that is what the prosecution was trying to drill to this jury, to show how his jealousy, his anger, his rage, and his being possessive over Cassie, like how far he's willing to go. And I think that's exactly what was the strategy of the prosecution, in addition to, of course, what was important, the arson part, in order to meet that racketeering conspiracy part, because breaking and entering is not part of it.
Brian, did they prove that it was him?
I think they got very close. I think there's actually a bit of a mistake by the defense. And what I mean by that is during the direct examination of Kid Cudi, it got to a point where they led us all the way to the edge. It was like, oh, maybe Sean Combs did or maybe didn't. But when Kid Cudi talked about arranging a meeting at the Soho House with Sean Combs and was asked why he did it, he came out and said, well, because I thought that Sean Combs was a part of this. Now, they objected to that and it's sustained. They should not contemplate that in the end of the case. But as we say as attorneys,
you can't unring the bell.
Can't unring the bell.
Jury heard it.
So I think it's going to be difficult for the defense there.
Okay, the jury also saw photos of Kid Cudi's car. What was the prosecution trying to do there with the pictures?
Well, they're corroborating that there was an arson that took place. So aside from Kid Cudi's word that his car was blown up by a Molotov cocktail, you also want to show the photographs because the picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So by showing it, the jury got real insight as to look how serious it was. So it corroborates the testimony.
Do you think the evidence is a problem for the defense?
I think they're going to try to steer away from it. They're going to say, okay, an arson happened. We're not sure. Maybe Collins did it or did not do it. They're going to say, this is what a jealous boyfriend does. This is not what a sex trafficker does. I think they try to reposition themselves as to who doesn't have an ex who has tried to burn up some of their clothes or their cars.
But the car?
Yeah,
Blow up the car?
Yeah, it's what crazy exes do.
Blow up cars?
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't want that crazy.
I think that's the only argument they have here, because they can't really go away from it wasn't Sean Combs, because so many of the breadcrumbs and the circumstantial evidence does point to him.
Yeah, and also you have, remember the email that Cassie has sent to her mother talking about the threat that Sean Combs made about causing harm to Kate. So I think it's strong there that it was Sean Combs that was responsible, or someone working with Sean Combs. And again, conspiracy is the part of the indictment, so you got it there.
It was interesting to see the picture anyway, because we all heard about that and hadn't seen the pictures of it yet.
Exactly.
Cassie's former makeup artist also testified. She said she saw alleged abuse. And that's, what's interesting about that is we've now heard multiple people say they saw this alleged domestic violence.
And multiple incidents, more importantly. We're not talking about the same incident. We're talking about now several incidents throughout these years that they were together.
Does that matter in all of this?
Yes, because remember what the prosecution is saying is that this violence is tied in the sense of the coercion and the control that Sean Combs had over Cassie. So that way Cassie wasn't really able to consent, be a willing participant in these sexual acts and these freak-offs. So it's all tied into it. So it's not just domestic violence. When you tie in the domestic violence with what Dr. Hughes testified to yesterday, and you put that all together, then you have a more clearer picture that there's no way that Cassie at all times was able to consent to these freak-offs.
I think it's a little bit difficult, though, for the government in this sense, though, because I think they might lose the forest from the trees in the sense of if this was always a domestic abuse relationship, which they have said it is, and they have all these incidences of domestic abuse, where are we separating from when it's just simple abuse that doesn't lead to a freak-off and abuse that does lead into a freak-off? Because we have all these incidences of abuse, but not always leading to I'm doing this so you participate in a freak-off.
But all you need is one. All you need is one when you're talking about sex trafficking or transportation to engage in prostitution. All I need is one freak off that was where she wasn't a willing participant, where she didn't consent to in order to make out the charges.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you both so much for being with us. Coming up, who is Kid Cudi and what some might find surprising about his high-profile appearance today, plus why the rapper's dog is one of the most searched topics tonight related to the Diddy trial. Welcome back. There's a lot of buzz surrounding today's big witness in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, Grammy-winning rapper Kid Cudi, who briefly dated Cassie Ventura, who has this message tonight after taking the stand.
People have been hitting me up the past week, just checking in, and even today, this is a stressful situation. I'm glad it's behind me.
Joining me tonight, ABC News contributor and DJ Megan Wright. Megan, and thanks so much for being with us. For people who don't know, who is Kid Cudi?
Kid Cudi is a real, I would say, hip-hop gem. Okay, he is a Grammy Award-winning artist, producer. He's also an actor. He broke out into the scene in 2008 with his hit single Day and Night. But here's the thing, we don't really see much of Kid Cudi outside of when he's promoting his art. We really don't. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. He's not in a bunch of paparazzi pictures. He really keeps to himself, but he has a very strong and very loyal fan base, which is why him showing up, at this trial, even just him getting out of the car, fans seeing him, in his jeans and in his leather jacket, smoking a cigarette like we see here, that was very surreal for fans because, again, you're kind of getting an inside look, of this guy that you don't really get to see so much, talking about something that not just in the hip hop community, but also fans have kind of heard rumors about. But I don't ever think there came a point where we thought, okay, we're actually going to hear or read, a transcript of what Cudi is talking about relating to his car blowing up. And then we hear, or his car being set on fire. And then we hear, the play-by-play of everything that happened with Cassie. And then we hear, about his dog, and then going to, see Diddy and him standing like a Marvel supervillain. Like, I don't think people expected that, especially from a guy who is usually very, very private. It was definitely surreal.
Yeah, getting to see those pictures today was really interesting. Suge Knight's name has been mentioned a few times in this trial already. Can you just give us a little bit of history here and how it's tied to this like long-standing East Coast, West Coast rap rivalry?
Sure. Yeah, the East Coast versus the West Coast, hip hop rivalry is one of the most talked about rivalries of all time. And of course, you have the beef that came from that, which is, Big versus Pac, and also their respective labels. Okay, so you have Big, who was signed to Bad Boy, which was helmed by Sean Combs, who at the time went by Puff Daddy, who now, of course, we refer to him as Diddy. Then you have Tupac, who was on Death Row, which was under Suge Knight. And so if I can get the story as quick as possible, it kind of goes, these two guys, Pac and Big, started off as friends, but things kind of changed in 1994 when Pac was shot outside of Quad Studios. He blamed Big and Puff, who both said they didn't have anything to do with it. But then, things kind of, led and went, forward with this back and forth. This records were put out. And although you can't say that, this beef led to their murders, Pac was murdered in September of '96. Big was murdered in, March of '97. And if you thought this stayed in the '90s, it didn't, as you can tell with what happened in the trial.
Yeah, we're hearing about it again. Megan Wright, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Sure. Well, there's no cameras in court during the Sean Combs trial, but that is not stopping people from going online, trying to keep up with all the latest updates from the courtroom. And that's where our daily segment, Searched, comes in, where we break down some of the top search trends about this case. Some of today's biggest searches: Molotov cocktails, Kid Cudi's dog, how much Diddy paid Cassie, and when will this trial end? Joining me now, from Los Angeles, is our ABC News contributor, Kelly Carter. She covers entertainment and pop culture for us. Okay, let's start with the Molotov cocktails. That's a term that came up during Kid Cudi's testimony.
Yeah, people want to know what that is because we've heard about the alleged incident with the car. Of course, Sean has denied any allegations of arson, but Kid Cudi and also Cassie have alleged that this happened. Wanted to see what that looked like, and finally people got a chance to see those photos. So they want to know what it is. And obviously it's a very illegal, dangerous, handmade bomb.
We also have to talk about Kid Cudi's dog because that also came up today and people have questions. So what is there to know?
Yeah, I mean, well, the dog is no longer with us, first off. But he said his dog was very distressed because the dog, after, again, an alleged break-in, was placed inside of a bathroom and locked inside of a bathroom, and the dog was extremely jittery in the aftermath of that experience. And no one wants to hear that about a dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone loves a dog, right?
Yeah.
Now, also, it's interesting because it's been a couple days since Cassie Ventura took the stand. Her testimony, though, continues to really generate interest. Here's one of the searches that's trending. How much did Diddy pay Cassie?
Yeah, it's interesting how that keeps coming up, right? Because, again, her testimony was last week. And in her testimony, she revealed that she was paid $20 million from the 2023 civil suit that she filed, and that was settled inside of 24 hours. And I think people probably keep coming back to that as new information comes out in the trial because they're, again, trying to connect all the dots here. And I think that's probably one of the biggest ones that there is out there to connect.
Kelly Carter, thank you, as always, for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. And thank you.
We're going to pause it right there. Okay, they're wrapping up. I'm going to review and fill y'all's teacup up on some of the things that are going on. So, yes, right, Diddy has always been in the conversation of Tupac and Biggie's death, right? There's a lot of content out about that, y'all. Dating back since Tupac got murdered. Biggie got murdered. Y'all can definitely Google and find 100 million documentaries on it. Diddy usually 9 times out of 10 pops up on it. Diddy was the Bad Boy manager and producer that Biggie Smalls was signed to. East Coast, West Coast. Tupac was on the East Coast or West Coast. Biggie was on the West Coast. And, it's speculation that Puffy is surrounded in the murders of both of those laid to rest rappers. Okay, so rest in peace to Kid Cudi's dog. I wonder what kind of dog he had. Let's see. A Molotov cocktail is a explosive bomb that people usually put in a bottle with some type of explosive liquid in it, gasoline, perhaps, or however have you, something very flammable. They put a rag out of it. A rag is inside of the bottle and it hangs out the top of the bottle. They light the outside of the whatever they have hanging out the bottle, a ripped up t-shirt, whatever, however have you, and they throw it at whatever, they're wanting to blow up. Okay? That's what a Molotov cocktail is. So we've got some Kid Cudi on the
Good evening. I'm Mike Marza, recapping what has been another key day in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Another celebrity testified today in the federal sex trafficking trial of Mr. Combs. Performer Kid Cudi was on the stand. The rapper telling the tale of threats.
Make sure that you guys are liking and subscribing as soon as you come in the room and have your teacups filled. Make sure that you always give back by liking and subscribing. Thank you for sipping tea with Tanisha. We're wrapping up week 2 of the Diddy trial. Tomorrow there is no court nor Monday. Okay, Monday is Memorial Day, so Diddy will be in his cell from tomorrow until Tuesday. Okay, we're gonna sip some tea now from ABC 7 News on the trial recap for the week.
Against Cassie Ventura, and evidence showing an act of arson, prosecutors say, on Mr. Cudi's car, on Kid Cudi's car. One he says that Combs is the one behind. In a moment that you'll hear in just a moment, as we talk about exactly what went down at the Soho House in Los Angeles. A lot to get to. ABC News legal contributor Bernarda Villalona standing by to dig deeper into everything that unfolded in court. But first up, with a recap, here's Darla Miles.
Scott Muscati, Cassie Ventura, and Sean Combs, a romantic rivalry that federal prosecutors allege led to unthinkable acts of intimidation. The 34-year-old musician and actor known as Kid Cudi taking the stand Thursday morning. Muscati testifying today that he and Ventura dated in 2011 during a breakup with Combs. Also telling the court when Combs found out about the relationship, he got a frantic call from Ventura that she was nervous, stressed, and scared. The next phone call, Muscati says, was from Capricorn Clark, an employee for Combs, telling him that she, Diddy, and another person were inside of his house.
So, is Capricorn Clark a girl or a guy? They just showed a picture of a girl as they mentioned Capricorn Clark. Do y'all think that's a girl? I thought it was a bodyguard or something. It looked like it may be a girl. Drop some tea in the chat and let me know if you guys know if Capricorn Clark is a girl or a guy.
Muscati telling the court that he immediately called Combs, recounting the conversation for jurors. He said, "Expletive, you in my house?" He was like, "Yeah, what's up?" I said, "Expletive, are you in my house?" He said, "I just want to talk to you." I said, "I'm on my way." He said, "I'm here waiting for you." Muscati going on to say when he got home, no one was there and he called the police. It was just 2 days ago when federal prosecutors showed the jury this email Ventura sent to her mother, dated 1 day after the break-in, claiming Combs was threatening to hurt Muscati. Then a few weeks later, in January 2012, Muscati says his dog sitter texted him these photos of his red Porsche, telling him his car was on fire. Prosecutors asking, "What did you see when you got home?" Muscati responding, "Just the damage. I saw the Molotov cocktail." "What was your reaction to the damage to your car?" Muscati telling the court his reaction was, "What the expletive?" But defense attorneys pointing the blame to Cassie Ventura, asking, "The person who played you, the person who played Sean, was Miss Ventura, true?" Muscati answering, "Yeah." And as to the two incident at Muscati's home, the defense asking, "There was no forced entry to the home." Muscati answering, "No." Defense attorneys also asking, "In the last 13 and a half years, have you been notified of any action in this case?" Muscati again answering no. Now, there are 4 other prosecution witnesses on the stand today, including a former personal assistant for Combs who said he quit after witnessing the violence with Cassie Ventura and another girlfriend. There was also a former makeup artist who says she saw injuries on Cassie Ventura, and a hotel manager who says they had to charge Sean Combs an extra $1,000 retainer whenever he reserved a room because he frequently left it dirty with candle wax and baby oil.
Our thanks to Darla Miles, joined now by ABC News legal contributor Bernarda Villalona. A lot to get to, as always, in this case. But let's start with Kid Cudi, because he was one of the more high-profile witnesses to take the stand. Take me to this moment. We're talking about the car that was firebombed. We saw the images of the car. You see the hole and the Molotov cocktail that was thrown in to light that fire. There was a moment that involved the Soho House, a meeting between Kid Cudi and Sean Combs, and the allegation of a supervillain. Take me through the testimony and what jurors heard today.
Oh, my God. So it was literally with this case is like can't stop, won't stop. There's always something going on. So in terms of Kid Cudi, so if we take it back a little bit, because it starts off with the breaking and entering in the sense that someone entered Kid Cudi's home and opened up some gifts that he had at the table. And supposedly there was a conversation between Sean Combs and Kid Cudi was like, cursing, "Are you at my house?" And Sean Combs says yes to that extent, but then when Kid Cudi goes there, Sean Combs is no longer at the house. Fast forward, dealing with this Molotov cocktail that is placed inside of the Porsche of Kid Cudi. Car blows up. We saw all the damage to his car. That very same day, Kid Cudi is like, he contacts Sean Combs and he's like, we need to meet because this is going way too far. So that's when they have that meeting at the Soho House where it's Kid Cudi, it's Sean Combs, and at some point Cassie enters. But in terms of when Kid Cudi says he goes inside of the Soho House, inside of this meeting room where Sean Combs is, and that Sean Combs is looking out the window and that he has both of his arms behind his back as a Marvel supervillain. Literally, the courtroom just started laughing at how Kid Cudi portrayed Sean Combs. But either way, they kill the beef, so to say, and says like, look, I'm not with Cassie anymore. We're ending this. Like, this violence needs to stop.
Yeah, because when Kid Cudi said, what's up with my car? Essentially,
exactly. He says, what car?
What car?
What are you talking about, pretty much?
Really acknowledging it. Why was his testimony, Kid Cudi's testimony, so important for the prosecution? So
Kid Cudi's testimony is very important for the prosecution for the specific act, the predicate act, the racketeering act of arson. So in order to make out racketeering conspiracy, they have to prove, aside from the criminal enterprise, they have to prove that 2 predicate acts were performed. One of the predicate acts that the prosecution is alleging is one of arson. Now we know through Kid Cudi, when it comes to arson, they are talking about how it's alleged that Sean Combs was involved or personally involved in the bombing of Kid Cudi's car. So that's why it's important. Now the prosecution is trying to get through those predicate acts to try to get that racketeering conspiracy. It's going to take a while for the prosecution to get to proving racketeering conspiracy because it involves so much when you have to prove the criminal enterprise and also the racketeering activity.
In the first week of testimony, we heard a lot about allegations of sex trafficking in different cities and different escorts and Cassie herself. What about the racketeering charge? How close are prosecutors to saying, haha, this is exactly what we were talking about in the opening?
Yeah, so they're getting there little by little. So they're jumping around a bit. So, for example, today they had Mr. Kaplan testify, who was Sean Combs' personal assistant for about 2 years. Now, in terms of how they were working him for the racketeering conspiracy, they got out through him that he helped set up the rooms for these freak-offs or for these night outs or hotel stays with Sean Combs. And also he purchased some of the items on the corporate credit card, bringing in the enterprise.
Gotcha.
That after Sean Combs would stay in these rooms for these lavish stays, that he will clean up the room. Remember that the room is always a mess because of all the baby oil and fluids and stuff.
And he felt a responsibility to protect the image.
Yes, and again, protecting the image is part of the racketeering conspiracy that the prosecution is saying that the purpose of this criminal enterprise, aside from to carry out these criminal acts, but also to protect the image of Sean Combs. So they're inching at it little by little. They're not there yet, in my opinion. I think for them to get that racketeering conspiracy, I really think that they need a deep insider, a close confidant of Sean Combs to come in and testify and be like, look, look, I did this at the direction of Sean Combs, or to continue and further these acts that he wanted to perform.
And the defense, from the defense point of view, they're trying to say Sean Combs was violent. We see that on
Yes.
the video. Sean Combs assaulted Cassie Ventura.
There's no running away from it. It's on video.
Exactly, he's on video, and he's not charged with that, though. And so how effective has the defense been able to be in poking holes in the actual charges that Diddy's
So
facing?
let's be clear. He's not charged with domestic violence. These are federal crimes that he's charged with. But the domestic violence is important because the prosecution is saying the domestic violence, it was causing Cassie to not be able to willingly consent to these freak-offs, can't consent to this sex trafficking, because we heard from Dr. Hughes yesterday that because of the physical and emotional trauma that she suffered at the hands of Sean Combs, and because she's so traumatized where she feels hopeless and is not able to get out of this relationship because of the control that Sean Combs had over her financially, emotionally, physically, that she's not able to consent. So while we say domestic violence is not part of the charges, it's a part of the acts in the sense of involving Cassie. The defense is going to clearly continue to say, this is a domestic violence case. This is domestic violence. We're owning up to the domestic violence, but this is not sex trafficking. This is not transportation to engage in prostitution. And in terms of the racketeering conspiracy, what the defense is saying, there's no criminal enterprise here. Whatever acts that other individuals within the business, within the corporation did, they did it independently aside from Sean Combs, and that no one's going to come in and say that they were part of a criminal enterprise, that they were part of this RICO conspiracy.
The former personal assistant finished his testimony today, Mr.
Yes,
Kaplan.
yes.
Did we learn more about why he was asking for immunity?
So I think, first off, it's normal for a witness to ask for immunity. For example, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I used to be a prosecutor for 16 years. If I think there is any viable crime that you can charge my client with, and you want my client to come in and speak, yes, I want a proffer. Yes, I want an immunity, because I am not going to take your word for it that you're not going to come after my client. So I rather say, give him immunity, and then he'll testify in order to protect them. Because he testified, there's a few things he testified that could have opened him up to criminal liability. The narcotics. Narcotics. Possession of narcotics. Not that it's viable that the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to go after him, but you just never know.
Gotcha. Because that was the headline yesterday. He's asking for immunity. What does that mean? And so I'm glad you cleared that up.
And just to be clear with immunity, he cannot be prosecuted for any crimes that he may have testified to, with the exception of if he commits perjury. Immunity does not protect you against perjury.
Final question for today, turning to tomorrow, and it's court's on recess.
Yes.
So now you've got this break for Memorial Day, and that includes Monday as well. So you have then Friday, then you have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. How does that play with the jury? I mean, they've heard so much up until this point. This is going to be the biggest break they've had.
So, Mike, I'm concerned. I'm concerned when there's ever a break in a long trial. And the reason why is because during that long break, people are watching the news. People are exposed to social media.
Even though they're not supposed to.
They're not supposed to be hearing, but it's inevitable to not hear anything about this case. It's being played everywhere. So I'm concerned about that, because what if someone is inadvertently exposed to media coverage about this case, and they're not supposed to be exposed to it, and though they start doing research about the case, or someone tampers with the jurors. There's so much that could happen. We can come back on Tuesday. I wouldn't be surprised if someone tells me, oh, one of the jurors have something to say to the judge about something they may have been exposed to. So you just never know. But in terms of how does it also play, is that you have a long weekend where they're not listening to testimony. They can be thinking about the testimony, or probably doing some research when they're not supposed to. You just never know.
Interesting. We'll see how that plays out. 4 days is a long time when you think about this trial at such a quick pace so far, and then to come to a complete halt. Bernarda, always great to get your perspective. We appreciate it. So as we mentioned, the court resumes on Tuesday. That's when the testimony will start back up. Stay with Eyewitness News and ABC 7 and why. For any new updates, we have a real-time blog of what's happening in the courtroom.
All right, we're wrapping up week 2, going into a long weekend, okay? I think tomorrow I'll come on review the Diddy on trial. Excuse me, not Diddy on trial. The United States versus Diddy. Okay. And I'm gonna be all the way, 100 with the situation, y'all. I'm glad it's, on a hiatus for 4 days. Diddy shit is draining. Right now, we're gonna get into Wait, have we heard this already? Let me make sure we haven't heard this one already, because I don't know. Diddy stuff is draining. Like, it's when on you. Just thinking about some of the things that is going on in the world already. It's already like a shit show. It's a lot going on, and Diddy just is putting the cherry on top for us every time. His trial is going on. So anyway,
A bombshell testimony from rapper Kid
let me make
Cudi,
sure
who
we
alleged that
haven't heard
Diddy
this already.
retaliated against him after learning that Cudi was dating.
Because I think we've already watched this.
Essentially just recently. And so George said that it was really sad that these incidents had happened because there was another incident with Gina, another girlfriend of Diddy, who Cassie said that who Cassie had said was kind of a problem throughout their. As far as just what's their reaction when something like this happens, and a lot of them just freeze and don't necessarily know what to do. Then all of a sudden, next thing she knew, Diddy had stormed out of the bedroom and just essentially left the hotel. And she didn't see any type of injuries to Diddy. However, when she saw Cassie, she saw a swollen eye, she saw a knot, she saw a busted lip, and then Mila said they picked up Cassie's stuff. She took Cassie over to her house, which was just about a mile away from this hotel, and Cassie had stayed with Mila for a few days at her home. Mila explained that she actually had a doctor friend who came over and kind of evaluated Cassie to see if everything was okay with her, because she said that she was worried that Cassie might have had a concussion. But she said Cassie did also have her stomach and her ribs checked out, and the doctor actually suggested for them to go to the emergency. Later from Diddy, he said he kind of made peace with the entire situation. And so that was kind of the wrap up of his direct testimony. Obviously, with the cross, there were some holes poked in it here and there.
I think I
definitely talk about that.
Before we even get into the cross, what exactly?
Talking about Mila Reynolds, or yeah, I don't know her last name. Mila, okay? And that's a friend of Cassie's or ex-girlfriend of Diddy's, one of the two. So let's sip this tea now, wrapping up the week 2, day 9 of the Diddy trial. Okay.
Was the apology. What exactly did Combs apologize for?
From Kid Cudi's testimony today, he said that he was at Soho House again this being years after the Molotov cocktail, that he ran into Diddy there, and Diddy was with his daughters. And essentially Diddy had said that he was just sorry for everything, not going into much detail, not a point where he said, I was the one who had did this, I'm the one behind it, nothing like that. But essentially he just said that the apology was pretty quick, brief, that he had moved on from the situation afterwards.
Did Kid Cudi testify about Diddy's alleged abuse of Cassie?
Well, that really was kind of touched upon during the cross-examination, the cross being presented by Brian Still, who we all know very well here at Law and Crime. But as far as what Kid Cudi said during the cross-examination, he said that Cassie never told him about sexual abuse. He said that he was in love with Cassie while the two were together. And
that Kid Cudi actually never saw Diddy hit Cassie around this time. But another point that I think Brian Steele was trying to point out during this testimony, during the cross-examination, is that Diddy never interrupted Kid Cudi and Cassie when they were together. And Kid Cudi said, yeah, that's pretty true. Then they started kind of talking about the burner phones and whether or not Cassie had told Kid Cudi that she had multiple phones, because while Cassie was on the stand, she did own up to the fact that she did have a burner phone, so that way Diddy wouldn't get mad or angry at her. And so when asked, did you tell the government that Cassie had multiple phones? Kid Cudi said, I can't remember, but if I said it, I said it. A little moment where people are laughing in the courtroom. But then they kind of ended on the cross-examination as far as just again driving the point home that this, and I hate to say it this way, that it might have been Cassie's fault for pointing Diddy to his home, because Cassie was the one that gave Diddy Kid Cudi's address, according to testimony today. So I think as far as just the big points of the cross-examination, it felt like they were kind of turning this to Cassie's fault, and this was Cassie's the reason that this had happened, because she was the one that gave the address to Diddy.
And also trying to say, you know, she was the one who played you, like she played Combs, like she's the manipulative one, she's the one who can't be trusted. And I think that's something that they've been building up a lot, talking about the her filing a lawsuit against Combs and that she might have ulterior motives, and, you know, the burner phones. And that could be a dangerous strategy, but it's an interesting strategy nonetheless. And, you know, focusing on the fact that she said she never told Kid Cudi that she was sexually abused, which is a key component of the prosecution's case. And I also understand they asked a little bit more about, was there further investigation into the essential firebombing of your car. He was also asked about DNA, I think. And so I could see where they were going with the cross-examination, but the points were well heard by Kid Cudi's testimony. So now I want to move into the other testimony. And I actually want to backtrack, because the day started with the continued testimony of George Kaplan, right? Diddy's former assistant. Very important in a racketeering case. If you're going to be talking about racketeering in a criminal enterprise, and that Combs used his businesses and his resources and his employees and his staff to further criminal activity and cover things up, you got to get the inner circle to testify. Now, my understanding is he testified about some specific violent incidents, right? What did he describe?
Yeah, so George Kaplan, when we see him inside the courtroom today, he was wearing an olive-colored green suit. He had no tie on. He's kind of looking around waiting for the jury. But as far as just my impression of him while he was on the stand, you could tell that he had still had love for Diddy, who used to be his former boss. And it was just kind of an interesting moment. But he had recalled just two incidents about why he essentially quit his job. And the first one happened in 2015, where he was on Diddy's private jet, because again, Diddy has a lot of money, so he's able to have his own private jet. And they were flying to Las Vegas because Diddy had a club appearance during this time. And so they're on Diddy's private jet. It's not just Diddy and Cassie, but there are other people there too. George was there, security was there, management was there, and then other team members of Diddy's were there as well too. So George said that he was sitting kind of at a table towards the back of the plane, but Cassie and Diddy themselves were behind this partition kind of also towards the back of the plane. And then all of a sudden George heard glass. So he said when he had heard this glass breaking, he saw Cassie on her back on the floor, and Diddy was above her. Diddy was holding this whiskey rock glass, and George said that there was tremendous commotion, and Cassie was screaming, essentially saying, "Isn't anyone seeing this?" And George said that he did nothing in this situation. He didn't de-escalate the situation. He didn't try to help Cassie. He just looked away. Cassie said, again, "Isn't anyone seeing this?" And nobody on that plane did anything to help her. So George said he was around 23 around the time when he was asked why he didn't do anything. He said he was young. He couldn't believe that he was working for an icon around this time. And again, just kind of he throughout his testimony today was really just kind of driving home the point that Diddy was such an icon, gave him his first major opportunity, and he was just so proud to be working with Diddy around this time. And so he said that he was trying to do something professionally, and by speaking up and speaking out against his boss, that he wouldn't be able to accomplish this. And so Diddy told Cassie during this incident to stay in the back of the plane. Nobody again checked on her. The flight was about an hour long, according to George, and Diddy again going to that club appearance. So what George's role was in the situation after was he was to bring Cassie to the club later on. He said he didn't see any bruising on Cassie in this particular incident, but did recall another incident where she was bruised in 2015. In that particular incident, Cassie was crying on the bed. She had bruising above her right eyebrow. And George said that he was in the room for less than 3 seconds before Diddy went in, and Diddy asked him to get him ointments like a witch hazel cream to kind of get rid of the bruising. But as far as the plane incident specifically, he said that he didn't see bruising on Cassie during that incident, and nor did anyone help her during that incident. But his role after the fact was to get Cassie, help get Cassie from the hotel essentially to the club, so that way she could meet Diddy during his club appearance and appear that everything was all good after this pretty shocking incident.
Well, I'll tell you a few things that I take away from that. Obviously, whenever you have an assistant or a member of the inner circle allegedly helping this alleged criminal conduct, it goes towards the racketeering charge, conspiracy to commit the racketeering activity, right? The agreement between Combs and others. He can't do it by himself. But what I think is really telling, and it also came out earlier on in the trial when you had Dawn Richard testify that she witnessed Cassie being punched by Diddy in front of celebrities and they did nothing. I think it goes to the idea why Cassie Ventura Fine never spoke up, why she didn't fight back, why she didn't leave. Because the allegation would be, if these people are not stepping in, how on earth could she feel protected to do anything? I mean, if Combs, it shows the power of him. He's able to do these things and nobody does anything, nobody steps in. What do you expect her to do? Now, I'm not saying that. I think that's the prosecution, an argument they're going to move forward with. But again, this is just another symptom of that. It's another characteristic of it. Real quick, on cross-examination, though, did they question him about the fact that this wasn't for the benefit of a criminal enterprise, right? It wasn't for the benefit of Sean Combs' businesses? Because I think that's a key component there. If you're saying there's a criminal enterprise, everything that they do has to benefit. Everything they do has to benefit the Combs businesses or Combs himself. Didn't they get into that a little bit?
Well, as far as the cross-examination goes, I just got to tell you, Jesse, sometimes with the defense and their questioning, I never know where they're kind of going with this. Because even during cross, which was done by Mark Agnifilo, there was just a lot of, it felt like ego boosting of Diddy and just the role that he had had essentially in this world before all the allegations came out, before his arrest, before the indictment, and even before the trial, because there was just a lot of talk just about his career around the time, how he was a mogul, he had handled all these different businesses and clothing and lifestyle and television. And so there are a lot of times where they were just essentially talking about Diddy's businesses, and Diddy seemed to kind of really enjoy this testimony where they're just kind of reminding the jury just the impact that Diddy's businesses had, including just diversity and how that was important to Diddy, and how George Kaplan really was proud of his work while working with Diddy under Combs Enterprise at the time. And as far as just getting into just some of the responsibilities that he had, and that he had a checklist for everything, and he was asked about the other members of Diddy's staff, including the CFO of Combs Enterprise. He was asked about Diddy's friend who worked at Revolt. He was asked about the CEO of Revolt. He was asked about James Cruz, Diddy's manager, and just the roles that they had played in kind of helping Diddy just essentially throughout his career and get to him to where he is or where he was at that point in time. They touched base a little bit about Christina Coram and how that George and Christina had this professional relationship, and that he essentially learned to do the job from Christina Coram's guidance. That was something that he had said on the stand today. He said he did speak to Christina about the violence, and she expressed sadness when he would hear that Diddy was essentially physically assaulting his girlfriend, but she had no endorsement of Diddy's behavior, which I thought was an interesting point they said under cross, mainly because Christina Coram worked with Diddy until essentially just recently. And George said that it was really sad that these incidents had happened, because there was another incident with Gina, another girlfriend of Diddy, who Cassie said that who Cassie had said was kind of a problem throughout their relationship. relationship because Diddy was dating both of them at the same time. Cassie was like, okay, you cannot see her anymore. And Diddy kept on seeing her. And then there was an incident at Diddy's home where Diddy was throwing apples at Gina. And that was another reason that George wanted to leave the job. And so he called these incidents horrible, but he said he didn't necessarily want to leave. But I think because of these incidents of violence that George said that he didn't want to do it anymore. And so then he was asked about Diddy's temper and how his temper didn't help his businesses. George was kind of pointing out that he had never worked harder in his life than he had worked with Diddy around that time period. The defense asked, was that a good or a bad thing? George said, I can't really answer that. They brought back the water incident where George was asked to get Diddy the specific alkaline water. He filled half of the gallon with water, or he filled half a gallon with one bottle, another half gallon, and then combined the bottle. Diddy didn't like it, threatened his job at that time, but didn't necessarily threaten George himself. And so as far as just the temper issue, George did admit the temper was kind of a lot for him to kind of handle around this time because he's in his early 20s while he's working for Diddy at this time. But then there were points during the cross where he said that Diddy was kind of inspirational and that even to this day, or maybe possibly prior to his arrest, that George would wish Diddy well. He'd always tell him happy birthday. He invited Diddy to his wedding. Diddy didn't respond. And then just yesterday, just a little fun fact is they were talking about Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G., and they were talking about how most of Diddy's staff members on that day, which was yesterday, May 21st, that most of those staff members would actually get that day off because it's Biggie's birthday. So when they're talking about Biggie, Diddy's smiling inside the courtroom. He's kind of nodding at George. He seems a lot more jovial than he was, especially when Kid Cudi was testifying. But it seemed like, as far as from George's standpoint, really the only reason he left the job was because of these incidents of physical violence.
Yeah.
However, he didn't necessarily step in to help with those acts of violence either.
See, I think that's key for the defense. If they want to say that his temper, what he was doing, was not to benefit himself, was not to benefit the criminal enterprise. This wasn't a good thing. So it kind of defeats the prosecution's argument that all of this was beneficial. All of this was for a common purpose. All of this was, a good thing for the criminal enterprise. If you could think about a mafia organization, right? So if they were engaged in a series of crimes that brought the organization prestige, helped their reputation, brought in more money, you can understand how that makes sense and is digestible for a jury. Here, they're saying everything Combs was doing really didn't help this organization, really didn't help this criminal enterprise. I can see what they were saying here. Okay, so now it brings us to the testimony of a makeup artist, okay? What were some of the chilling details from this makeup artist? Because when I first heard that she was being called to the stand, and I understand a makeup artist for Cassie, the first thing I think is, oh, did she see injuries, and were these injuries that she covered up with makeup? Talk to us about what the makeup artist said.
So Mila Morales is a makeup artist, and she's been one who has been kind of vocal in recent interviews just about working with Cassie for a number of years, but also in that same respect, also working with Diddy as well. And so she mentioned one incident. It was Grammy weekend of 2010, so a little while ago, and there was this party at Prince's house, so another Prince mention. She said that she had seen Cassie earlier in that day. They were at the, but they ended up going back to the Beverly Hills Hotel. Mila had fallen asleep, and then all of a sudden she wakes up and she hears this kind of commotion going on. Diddy somehow gets inside this hotel room. He comes in and says, where the F is she? And she being Cassie. He was looking for Cassie. So he walked into the bedroom, and all of a sudden Mila could just hear screaming and yelling, and Mila said that she didn't know what to do, something that a lot of people have testified to as far as just what's their reaction when something like this happens, and a lot of them just freeze and don't necessarily know what to do. Then all of a sudden, next thing she knew, Diddy had stormed out of the bedroom and just essentially left the hotel, and she didn't see any type of injuries to Diddy. However, when she saw Cassie, she saw a swollen eye, she saw knots, she saw a busted lip, and then Mila said they picked up Cassie's stuff. She took Cassie over to her house, which was just about a mile away from this hotel, and Cassie had stayed with Mila for a few days at her home. Mila explained that she actually had a doctor friend who came over and kind of evaluated Cassie to see if everything was okay with her, because she said that she was worried that Cassie might have had a concussion. But she said Cassie did also have her stomach and her ribs checked out, and the doctor actually suggested for them to go to the emergency room. They didn't go to the emergency room because Mila said around that time she was afraid of Diddy, and that at the time she had feared for her life, but then there was kind of an objection. That objection was sustained, and so they kind of brought that back in again, where Mila explained she didn't call the police because she feared for her life. And so afterwards, when Cassie left Mila's house, they didn't acknowledge the situation or anything. Mila and Cassie specifically didn't acknowledge what happened. Mila and Diddy never spoke about this incident. However, this was an incident that Mila Morales did talk about in TV interviews because she was asked about that under direct examination. But Mila explained that she wasn't paid to do the interviews. However, she did provide a photo to a news outlet of herself and Kim Porter and said that she was paid $1,000 for those photo rights. And I think that the government tried to get ahead of this because they knew that the defense was going to be asking about this during her cross-examination. But as far as this particular incident in 2010, it seemed that it really impacted Mila, but that was the one incident that she had spoken about while she testified today.
Yeah, I knew the defense was going to have a field day with that, because the idea that she kept doing the media rounds and was getting paid for the photos, it would suggest she has a financial and reputational incentive to be a part of this story, to maybe go forward with these allegations, goes to her credibility. The final witness I want to talk to you about is this hotel manager, okay? I believe the name is Frederick Zamor, apologies if I mispronounced the name. But my understanding is this person revealed, Diddy allegedly used aliases to check into hotels, right? What were the names that Diddy allegedly used, and why does it matter?
Yeah, so when Frederick Zamor came into the courtroom today, I didn't necessarily know where his testimony would necessarily go. All we knew about him was that he was an employee at a hotel, but didn't know where that would kind of lead to. And so it was just a lot of exhibits with a lot of just kind of logs and documents, just about everything. So some of the names that we had seen from the exhibits are just names related to Sean Combs. We saw that the name under the reservation would be under Orion Lopez, and we saw so many of the name changes attached to that profile of Ryan Lopez, also for Sean Combs. And so we saw names including Jackie Starr. We saw Sean Combs. We saw Sean Combs be changed to Jackie Starr. We saw Jackie Starr be changed to Sean Combs, and then it was later changed to Ryan Lopez. And then we saw check-in logs, we saw checkout logs as well too, and there was just a lot of just quick documents that we were seeing, and they were just so small to read. But a lot of the big names that we saw, again, being Jackie Starr, Sean Combs, Ryan Lopez, Frank Black, a name that we know that Diddy used as an alias a number of times in a lot of other different circumstances. And so those were the big names that we saw in just a lot of those documents with a very small imprint on them. Also, another interesting thing that we saw, Jesse, was some of the profile notes. And those were essentially just the long list of notes attached to the profiles, normally about kind of the usuals that the guests would have when they checked into these hotels. But for this specific profile note that we saw things like always spill candle wax on everything and uses excessive amounts of oil, but didn't specify what type of oil, just said excessive amounts of oil. Place the room out of order upon departure for deep cleaning. Please authorize an extra $1,000 when guest stays with us to cover any room damages. And then we saw that if there needed to be credit card approval, it had to go through Eli Maroon, Dave Shirley, or Christina Coram. And so those three names specifically were Diddy's former assistants that we now know to be. But I just thought it was interesting as far as those specific profile notes, just about the candles, just about the oil. But there is also amenities too that were bought, I guess, at this hotel, such as fruit, such as water, such as chocolate, truffled chocolate as well, champagne and birthday cake. And so I think what the government was trying to do, because there was no cross-examination to this witness, was just kind of explain just what all goes into the hotel from the hotel staff's point of view, as far as what hotel staffers can normally expect whenever Sean Combs or his other aliases check into one of their rooms.
What a day. What a day. I mean, if people thought that week 2 of this trial was going to be slow, they were wrong. So now we go into what's next. What is next in this case, Elizabeth?
Yeah. So one of the one things I love that the government always does is tell us what witnesses we're expecting towards the end of court. So this is normally a time where the jury has already gone. Some other people kind of leave the courtroom too, but I always kind of stick around to know what are we going to expect next. But what we can expect on Tuesday, because a lot of us are going to enjoy this very nice long weekend, myself included, and some of the jurors, and hopefully you too, Jesse. But what we can expect on Tuesday is another probably bombshell day, because guess who's testifying? Capricorn Clark. And Capricorn Clark used to work for Diddy. She was involved in a way with the whole Molotov cocktail situation with Kid Cudi. So we're expecting to hear from her just about everything that she witnessed during her time with Diddy and even being friends with Cassie. The other witnesses that are going to be called after Capricorn Clark are going to be, I guess, an officer with LAPD as well as an officer with LAFD. So maybe it's going to be kind of in a continuation of the Kid Cudi allegations and the Molotov cocktail and possibly that. But they didn't go into, they didn't specify what the officers or even the firefighter might possibly talk about. But as far as Capricorn Clark goes, it's a witness I'm definitely kind of anxious to hear from.
Again, kidnapping, arson, these underlying predicate crimes for the overall racketeering charge, a charge that carries life in prison. I'm not surprised they might be focusing so much attention on those two potential underlying crimes. Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much for your great reporting today and this.
All right. I mean, they got a lot of people speculating about Diddy, right? Life in prison, the arson, the this, the that. I want to look up something. Okay. As far as like the arson is concerned, right? What are the sentencing guidelines for arson to bring charges on somebody for arson? Like the, you know what I mean, like the time frame that you could bring charges. I mean, because they're saying like, okay, we want to give Diddy life in prison. The statute of limitations, right? So the statute of limitations for arson is generally 3 years. Understanding this time frame is essential as it significantly impacts potential arson penalties and available arson defenses, influencing legal strategy and the case outcome. What is the minimum time for arson? 16 months for malicious burning of personal property. Okay. Diddy's not going to get no real close to no life sentence for speculations of him burning up Kid Cudi car. And they may not even be able to charge him. I don't even see why they were even able to charge him. That's in my state. Let me look up what it is in New York. What are the statute of limitations on arson in New York City? Oh, hold on a minute. In New York, Diddy, there are no statute of limitations for arson, meaning charges can be filed at any time. This applies to arson in the first degree. It's a class A1 felony, while the general rule is that a prosecution must be instituted within a certain time frame. Arson is an exception to this rule. Woo! In New York, girl, they're not playing with y'all's asses, okay? If you commit arson and get caught and can charge with it 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years, then they can take you down through there and try to get you convicted of it. Okay? So, Class A is the worst severe felony. Um, so in New York, how long after you commit a crime can you be charged? There is no time limit to bring charges for crimes like murder or actual assault. Less serious felonies have a 5-year statute of limitations. Okay, so that's essentially what they're trying to charge Diddy with, actual assaults and stuff, right? So they have no time limit to bring those charges for crimes. You can get 10 years for arson, 6 years for Class A or Class Y felonies. Okay. 5 years for felonies committed by public, and so on and so forth. There are no statute of limitations on arson in New York. New York, okay? Yeah. Oh my, oh my. So that will conclude our day. We're gonna wrap up day 9, week 2 of the Diddy trial. I hope that you guys have, got your teacups filled. I'm Tanisha Talks Teas. Y'all drop y'all's teacups in the chat and ponder replay. Please like and subscribe when you come into the room and get your teacup filled up. Y'all let me know, why do y'all think that Diddy has not, been told to have done all these things, or said to have done all these things that we've heard per trial, right? Like the orgies that were drug induced and drug filled with the IVs, and you know what I'm saying, all of that, unless it's only week 2, only day 9. That's yet to be brought in, right? We have to continue to sip this tea, fill up our teacups, and see what's what, right? So yeah, like why do you think none of the gay narratives will come up about Diddy? I mean, a lot of that was going on, right? Drop that in the chat as well, along with your teacups. Why do you think that it's only ever been like Diddy, off in the cut somewhere watching, not ever involved or nothing so far that we hear? I haven't really heard too much testament to Diddy being involved in the freak-offs. Maybe they're watching something behind the curtain that we are not, from the tapes and stuff that they may have gotten from Diddy's homes. We will have to continue to sip this tea and see. Thank you guys so much for joining Tanisha Talks Teas on this Thursday evening. Hope you have a blessed day. Remember, please stay safe, as 5 of the Orland Parish inmates are still on the loose. I did some tea spilling on that earlier this morning. Make sure you get over there and watch part 1 and part 2. Okay, make sure you hit that notification bell so that you are always updated whenever I go live. I'm live right now on YouTube, hey, Facebook, hey, and Twitch. Okay, you can find me on all streaming platforms. Okay, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Thank you. Have a great rest of your night. Remember, be safe. Okay, keep your baby oil locked away. He just might slide off. Okay, just might slide off.
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired, and remember, always stay sipping. Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay gifted.